Fantastic. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump on in, unless there's really anything else we need to cover at this point. I think I'll start. We've got a great topic for everybody this afternoon: resiliency during the time of COVID. And PowerPoint wants to jump ahead. Let's slow this down here. I want to introduce everyone on the Yardi side. Today joining us, we've got Gabrielle Van Horn. She's the Director of Client Services here at Yardi. Gabrielle's very in touch with the industry. Excited to have her here with us today to cover some really relevant topics with everybody. My name is Jeff Bischoff. I'm the Senior Director of PHA Sales here at Yardi. Very pleased to be joining you this afternoon to talk through some of the tools in the industry that can help PHAs facilitate social distancing with really their entire network. And Inger Budke as well joining us from Yardi. Inger, thanks for joining. She's going to be covering a few topics as well. And Inger spent some time in the industry prior to joining Yardi. So some great perspective from her. And I think just as a whole, the three of us are excited to be with you here today virtually. Wish we could be in person, but this is the next best thing. So why don't we go ahead and jump in, and I'll cover what we're going to talk about today. In terms of the agenda, Inger's going to start us off with highlighting the power of technology in today's social environment. It's important to think about ways that we can leverage technology. And she'll also cover some of the HUD notices, the relevant HUD notices. And then we'll transition over to Gabrielle to cover working and training remotely. She'll also touch on working with participants. And finally, we'll follow up with online services. Again, online services that you can offer within your network, whether that's your participants, your vendors, your own staff. We'll take a look at some of those things. And then finally, we want to, of course, leave some time for Q&A. So we can go ahead and jump in. And Inger, I'm going to turn it over to you. And we'll start with the power of technology.
So why don't you just let everybody know we're going to turn our cameras off.
Perfect. Yeah, just start.
Yep. So we're going to turn our cameras off, and then we'll turn our cameras back on when we are answering questions at the end. So hopefully you can see this cartoon. I think this kind of sums up our life of the last few months. Gave us all a good laugh, so we thought it's always a good idea to start with some laughter. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Jeff.
All right.
And our good friend Ben Franklin said it best: nothing is certain except for death and taxes. I would also like to add dust, laundry, and change. Change is always something that we will be with us always. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And one thing that we just kind of want to probably start out by saying is HUD is notoriously inflexible. But in this time, we've actually seen HUD make some big changes that we believe are good changes for agencies. All of us at Yardi and the public housing team, we are all passionately involved with advocating for affordable and subsidized housing. So we're with you in the trenches in a sense, and we love watching the changes. And when we see what we believe there are some good changes coming. Obviously, the pandemic was not a good change, but it has prompted some interesting things. So along those lines, it is interesting when you talk about change, I know I worked with, one of my favorite jobs at a housing authority was working with seniors, and just my own observation was that those who did the best in aging, even with health challenges, were those who maintained a sense of humor, a sense of gratitude, ability to handle loss, and flexibility, not just mental flexibility, but physical flexibility. And this time is a time of loss for a lot of people. So how can we look at that? How can we maintain some humor and just take a look at how we've done things, and maybe we can do things differently. So that's kind of an exciting thing. I know when looking at the situation that we're in right now, many of us couldn't even continue to do our job as we're doing it today, working remotely in many cases. if some of the technology hadn't come along to allow us to do that, like Zoom, GoToMeeting, Wi-Fi, hotspots, smartphones, a lot of different things, electronic signatures. And so that's just kind of, I think the thing to think about when I think about it is I'm thankful for that. Another thing to look at with the technology is when we are, thanks, Jeff. When we're looking at technology, how are things were done before? Many of our clients who are homeless or don't have computer access, they can't go to the library today. So what do we need to do? How do we need to leverage and change how we operate so that people can do things from a smartphone, or they can do things with a kiosk in your lobby where they can scan things and maintain social distancing and safety, but actually get the things done that need to get done. So we'll go ahead and take a look at HUD notices. And the FAQ, the most recent one I've seen, was from July, and there were some interesting things in that of note. Just kind of highlighted a few things on it, but one of the things that is clear is who are your essential workers, and it is clear that many of your agency staff are essential workers. They're taking care of emergency maintenance requests at properties. They may be working in construction or renovation, which is essential, or they may be providing, the social services that are so needed for our clients or your clients. So HUD did do a good definition of that. Another interesting item is the remote video inspections. Definitely saying you don't have to store them and keep all that data, but that you could do a remote video inspection. And how would you do that? I think it's an exciting proposition, but again, looking at technology that HUD necessarily hasn't looked at before. Looking at upgrades to technology that would allow you to use care funds to go ahead and look at applicant intake and lease signatures and allow text messaging, and that not only will those things facilitate social distancing, but HUD has said that will improve operational efficiency. So they are really pushing agencies into that direction, which is exciting. Also, that notice affirms that electronic signatures are okay, except for with an amendment to your ACC, and that digital files in a secure cloud, HUD is saying, is clearly, in their view, better than employees bringing paper files home. Go to the next slide. This is for public and Indian housing. And then the next notice, which in my mind is actually even more exciting of a notice, came from the multifamily side of HUD, and where it really did say that HUD is allowing on your 9886 and your 559, they are allowing electronic signatures. And for years, you had to go gather that wet signature on that 59. I remember running a senior property that was a 59 property, having to get those wet signatures. And it seems kind of crazy that if I can buy a car 200 miles away from my house with an electronic signature, why you can't do an electronic signature for your housing. So that is exciting. I think that's a great change on the multifamily side. Those are your 59 properties, RD. And additionally, HUD is saying that you can do digital file storage, which Public and Indian Housing has said you could do it for a while. So now they're allowing it on the multifamily side, which is also, in my view, a very good change. Now, when it relates to the HUD manual, the HUD handbook, the 4350, which often looks at and governs your tax credit properties, the change there is kind of a little slower. And what we've seen is that we're hoping, since multifamily HUD has said you can do electronic signatures on your 59 and your 9887 and other documents, that the state finance agencies will start following suit and allowing that as well. And that really is a state-to-state change, or allowing it. And I know in Washington, my information indicates that it is allowed. In California, where our office is, and we have a lot of clients, the Tax Credit Allocation Committee in California is allowing electronic signatures, but only with one certain provider. And again, other states are evolving in this way, but we at Yardi see that as a positive change to help your clients and help your staff, and again, facilitating social distancing and getting your job done. And with that, we are going to talk about working from home, which I'm sure many of you have started doing. So I'm going to turn it over to Gabrielle Van Horn.
Thanks, Inger. So working from home, a lot of us have already asked ourselves and answered these questions, but I think it's interesting for us to keep asking these questions as we go along. Yesterday I spoke with a client who is having people come into the office on a socially distanced basis because he feels he needs them to get together in order to collaborate on an important project. And so for us at Yardi, you might think that because we're a technology company, we were already and just raring to go work from home. But in reality, we had very few people who were working from home at the time that COVID hit. Obviously, many of you have essential workers who simply will not be able to work from home for one reason or another. There, of course, safety is a key issue. At Yardi, we also did have some essential workers. We made a decision that we would vacate the building that the essential workers needed to be in so that they would be safer. And everybody went home. And while we thought that might be easy in the beginning, it did have challenges. So one of the first challenges was that not everybody had a laptop. And as crazy as that sounds, we had had a policy that new employees would always start out with a desktop and that you would earn your laptop, so to speak. And so we had people with desktop onlys that we wanted to still be working. And so we decided to go ahead and let them take home their desktops and their monitors, and we gave them monitor stands and sent them home. The next thing that I think is a challenge for many is if you are not using cloud-based software just in general, suddenly you could have real challenges. So land-based software, meaning local area network software, where it only works inside your network, presents unique challenges to people. So I know I have been so impressed to see the adaption of all kinds of technology, adaption and adoption. And a lot of people, I think, are using VPNs and other tools to get into their local area network so they can keep on trucking. People are using things like Amazon hosting if they don't have cloud-based products. So that secure communications and ability to be online suddenly became very crucial. And then for us, another concern was, do we have employees who need supervision? So do we have people who are newer or need to be monitored more closely? Next slide, Jeff, or next thing. And what I will say is I'm a little embarrassed to admit this, but I suddenly became very anxious about my team. Suddenly I was very interested in what kind of technology tools I could use to see what people are doing. And after thinking about it for a while, I realized, hey, I myself have 60 some odd people that work for me. And I am not sitting with each one of them and carefully watching every single thing that they are doing today. I need to rely on the tools that I have. And the tools that I have, for the most part, are still standing me in excellent stead. So we have seen at Yardi, and I think most of you are probably using much more reporting. So metrics became more important. So in the land of housing, those would be, how many recertifications are we processing? How many interims are we processing? You know, what kind of metrics do we have? Very similar at Yardi. And what we saw was surprising to me that productivity actually increased when everyone went home. We saw that satisfaction seemed to go up, both with our customers and with our employees, and that people were just getting more work done. We did have a few people who seemed to have challenges. I'll talk about those on the next slide. Jeff? So here to the right are actually some of the Yardi employees, all of them working from home. What we found was some of our employees, especially in California, had what I'll call environmentally challenged offices. So we have a lot of employees who have shared living situations. Housing is expensive here, as I know it is in parts of your jurisdictions as well. And so we had these people that we had sent home with desktops, but they couldn't park their desktop in the middle of the living room in their shared housing environment. So we had to look at other ways to help our employees with their connectivity problems. In some cases, we went ahead and got laptops when we could, although we had challenges initially trying to get all the laptops we wanted. But we did other things like bouncing wireless, and it was a very interesting time initially. We also have people with kids at home. I think everyone has this, where our best workers are challenged by needing to educate and care for their children who are unexpectedly at home. We also had a group of employees, a smaller group, but certainly notable. While everyone, I think, had fear initially, there were some people who seemed to be suffering from severe anxiety and depression at suddenly being isolated by COVID. And so what our magic word became is flexibility, being flexible. And what we found was people might not be able to have a meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning if they have small children. We might need to have that meeting a little bit later on in the day, and that's okay. Obviously, being reasonable with that and making sure that all of our work is getting done is important, but it isn't important that it happens right this very second. It's important that it gets done in the big picture. So we had to adjust our expectations and be a little bit more flexible. Next. So for us, one of the things that we learned very early is that communication is everything, and the power of webcams. Although I will tell you an embarrassing story, which was very early on in COVID. I was in a Zoom meeting, and I wasn't as familiar with Zoom as I was with GoToMeeting. And so I was on the meeting, and I thought that I was pressing the mute button, and instead I had turned on the video, and I was wearing a bathrobe only and was very disheveled, walking around my house with this bathrobe on, talking to a customer. So there's some, adjustment to technology and a few embarrassing moments. I think a lot of us have had that, where a child suddenly runs in the room or the dog starts barking. But that turning on the webcam so that we can all see each other is really important. Touching base with people, looking for ways to engage employees. One thing that we did was at Yardi, we celebrate 5-8 Day. So on May 8th, we always celebrate 5-8 day. So we had a Kahoot, which is an online game for our employees in order to celebrate 5-8 day. Next slide. So another challenge that we had was hiring and onboarding. So we decided when doing new hiring that we needed to focus more on technical skills than we had in the past. While we are a technology company, we like to have people with a variety of different backgrounds. We especially like to have people with real life industry experience or people with a property management or accounting background, something like that. But we realized early that it would be very challenging for us to train people effectively if they were not very technically savvy. So one of the first things that we did was set up a new pre-screening tool. So we're using Aspire, which is our e-learning tool, but you could do this with any kind of online learning. We had people take a class and they needed to get a certain percent passed in order to move on to the next stage of the hiring process at Yardi. Then we interviewed them via Zoom, just like we're using now. And one of the questions that we would ask was, can you show me how to change my name on this Zoom meeting? So we screen people out based on their ability to use technology. And this was very effective. We also learned that we really needed to document our procedures better. Most housing authorities have, that was funny, somebody just chatted, I would have failed that test. I don't know, I'll teach you how to do it. We found that everybody has an admin and an ACOP. That tells you what your policies are. Just like that at Yardi, we have rules and all kinds of policies. But what we didn't have were carefully documented procedures for how we do things. And so we are now going through the process of better documenting what our procedures are for daily activities that we want our employees to do in order to be successful. So if I were going to leave you with one thing, because I think a lot of people here have already been through this process, it would be try to document what your procedures are along with your policies and your software. Oh, I click this when I am doing an interim, and then I sign this and send it to Betty Joe, or whatever your procedures are, so that if you do need to bring on new people, you can do it efficiently and effectively without relying on in-person communication. Next. Participant. Okay, so don't make assumptions about your participants in terms of their technological capabilities. So I have a funny story about this. Well, I thought it was funny, which is obviously I think of myself as a pretty technologically savvy person. I work for a software company and we use lots of mobile apps. I was in a training in Pennsylvania and it happened to be at an elderly building, elderly and disabled building. So I came out of the training and there was an elderly gentleman sitting in the lobby and he had a smartphone and he said, "Hi, I'm Harold. I'm Gabrielle, nice to meet you." He said, "Do you think you could help me with my phone?" I said, "Sure, I'll give it a try." I was imagining, oh, maybe he just needs help opening his email or taking a picture or something like that. No, no, no. he was using a very fancy app called Dribble to add all kinds of filters to images. After looking at it with him for 2 or 3 minutes, it was way over my head, but he figured it out on his own. So what I'll say there is, I learned a lot from that experience, which is don't underestimate what the participants may or may not know about technology. Identifying the needs of the people in your community is a challenge sometimes. So since most agencies have received CARES money, we're seeing a lot of customers doing, I'll call it special things and special programs for spending CARES money, rental assistance, things like that. So identifying what the participants need the most has been an interesting challenge for some of our customers. Of course, housing is always a need, but some of our clients have gotten very creative with sending out survey monkey type things and automated emails from software to poll the participants about what it is that they really need. So transportation has been a key issue, especially for people who used ride sharing. If there is not public transportation, food and getting food delivery has been a challenge for people. Food delivery can be very expensive. One of our customers is using their CARES money to shop and deliver food to their participants. Making sure that everybody has medical care. People that are getting sick are getting medical care. Checking in on everybody and making sure we're all healthy and safe has been a key priority. And then, of course, technology assistance. I needed Harold to teach me how to use Dribble. A lot of agencies are now turning to helping to teach their participants how to use things like Zoom. So assisting participants with learning technology, learning how to use apps on the phone, using portals, anything like that. Having online sessions, but also some socially distant in-person sessions seems to be a thing that people are doing a lot. Next slide. And then here I would just say, sort of as a last thing, because I've seen both wonderful things here and really maybe not so wonderful things. When you're communicating with your participants, try to pretend like there is not a million official things we want to say to them. The best, most successful messages seem to be very caring and reassuring. First of all, we know that it's a scary time. We are here. So a lot of the participants are not very up on what is or isn't happening at HUD, knowing that they're going to continue to be housed and continue to be safe is very important. Providing information, providing services. So if you're providing a service, you don't need to go into a long thing about it. Just say what the service is. And then finally, when you're providing referrals for help, making sure you're giving a phone number and a website. So if you can, keep it to one page. And that's it for me. There's some great comments here. Can't wait to do the Q&A later.
Thanks so much, Gabrielle. So I think we're going to transition to online services, and these are some things to think about when it comes to supporting various folks in your network, whether that's applicants, participants, residents, extending even to vendors and landlords and your own staff. So I think it's important for us to take a look at what's offered in the industry and see what's a fit for your agency based on your needs, based on particular portfolios. And starting with applicants, residents, and participants, some of the tools that exist out there might be online applications. So enabling applicants to apply via a mobile device, for example, really from anywhere at any time. Perhaps, performing more waitlist related functions online as well, such as purging, for example. Online certifications, another great thing to consider when it comes to facilitating social distancing. So whether that's the intake certification for applicants or interim or research for your existing participants and residents, those are all great tools to consider in today's social environment. Online maintenance requests, so providing residents with self-service tools, on a whim to be able to report issues with their unit and responding to those issues. I'll get to that here in a moment. And finally, related to that, online payments. So making life a little easier on them when it comes to paying their rent via various methods that are available in the industry, whether that's ACH, direct from their bank account, or with debit and credit cards. So that's just a few examples of some of the tools that exist, again, for applicants, residents, and participants, and worth taking a closer look at how those can help your agency and the people that you serve. When it comes to online services for landlords and vendors, providing self-service portals for your landlords, for example, ways for them to upload documents electronically, to share documents with them is something that we've seen in the industry that's very helpful. Providing them real-time visibility into important information such as their ledgers, to give them reassurance that they're getting paid on time, inspection results, or important contact information such as caseworker information. And these are typically things they may be calling into the agency for, or even you may be seeing them in person for from time to time, and EFT configuration as well. So giving them the ability to update, giving them the ability to update critical information on their own. And then when it comes to your AP vendors, providing, again, that self-service portal for managing their relationship, managing their profile with you, allowing them to maintain their licenses and their certifications. And that's something that makes life much easier for them, providing them those reminders so that they can remain in compliance with your agency. And then real-time invoice tracking. I think invoices for vendors are something that they're typically contacting you pretty frequently about, maybe to find out the status of it. Well, this is an opportunity or something to consider just to provide more efficiency, I think, in your day-to-day communications with vendors. And then finally, a device to upload or even create invoices within their own self-service portal. So those are a few tools when it comes to landlords and vendors to consider. And then finally, for your own staff, making it easier to manage that certification process. So if you're considering offering things like online certifications for participants and residents, are there tools that exist to make that process even easier to manage for your own staff? Maybe that's giving them, a tool with dashboards to enhance their organization. Those are maybe technology to provide, more clear notices when tasks are due when it comes to certifications. There's a lot of things to think about when it comes to certifications. Maintenance, I mentioned an online portal for residents submitting maintenance requests. Well, how about your own maintenance staff? When it comes to addressing those maintenance issues, it's worth taking a look at online portals for your own maintenance technicians and inspectors, so that they can provide that work safely out in the field and report back more efficiently to the main office. And finally, accounts payable. I think when it comes to accounts payable, this may be an opportunity not only to create a safer work environment, but also add some efficiency at the same time. So considering electronic invoicing and approval workflows, and even seeing some agencies look to outsource some of those administrative tasks, such as cutting checks, to vendors. So definitely some ways when it comes to accounts payable to provide more efficiencies, facilitate social distancing, and just create that safer work environment. These are all just some examples, some of which may be better fit for some agencies than others, but good things to consider here. In terms of online services, that's all I had. And so we want to take an opportunity here. I know several folks have brought up some questions and comments, but we want to take an opportunity for Q&A and welcome some feedback as well. Any questions based on the topics?
I don't have my bathrobe on this time, Jeff. I'm sure you'll be relieved to see that.
I am immediately relieved. Thank you, Gabrielle.
Questions?
Is there anything that maybe at your agency that you guys have implemented related to what we've talked about, whether it's policies, procedures, techniques that have been effective? Anything you guys want to share?
Yeah, one of the things we were talking about before the session was Yardi has some free exercise classes, and there are so many things like at our local community college classes that are free right now. So encouraging people to get online and engage. My mom, who is in her late 70s, is taking 3 or 4 different classes on Zoom right now. And this is somebody who I needed to help her set up a shortcut for her email a year ago. So great progress there with Zoom. Oh, somebody is talking about virtual inspections and running into challenges with virtual inspections. I would love for us to talk about that, and also about how you are documenting those virtual inspections. Lauren, did you want to tell us a little bit about what's going on, and maybe we could get some ideas from people? You can get a little vertigo watching the screen while watching. Yes, yes. From watching the virtual inspection, they're recording it and you feel a little dizzy. Yeah, I would say watching it on your phone as opposed to watching it on a big screen might help a little bit with that. I know I'm one of those people who gets vertigo really easily whenever there's one of those webcam-y kind of movies where everything's supposed to be in real life. I always just feel terrible. So I think watching things on the phone will help a little bit with that vertigo. They run along the apartment as I tell them what to test. Interesting. Oh, so the inspectors, now that's interesting. It sounds like that Lauren is, the inspectors are not just on their own doing the inspection, they're being guided through the inspection steps. Ah, well, I would offer a suggestion there, which is, this is not a plug for Yardi either. I think this is true for most mobile software inspection tools. One of the features that most of them have is a notes field that talks about what the inspection protocols are and how to meet them. And so there's a reference there so that even people who are new inspectors can know what to look for. What should I be looking for with these outlets? And so they refer back to the guidance. I would try to teach them to be the inspector rather than to try to walk them through that. That's just me. And maybe send them to some online training. I think both NARO and NAN and Quadell, there's a bunch of different providers that have certification courses on inspections. Oh, Inger says it's the tenant running the camera at home. Ah. Oh yes, rough watching the live video. Oh, well, we can't send all the tenants to inspections. Wow. Okay. Got it. That is a challenge. Maybe somebody else who actually is doing this has an idea. Thoughts?
It's so quiet. Everyone's muted.
I know.
It's hard because we can't see any of your faces, so we don't know what people are, what their feedback or thoughts are.
Yeah.
If you have any comments, please feel free to unmute yourself to share if you'd like.
This is Lauren A. It's a little easier just to talk rather than stumble through my text. But doing those virtual are kind of problematic, even with people that are video savvy. I'm trying to make, whether it's Microsoft Teams or Zoom or Google Duo, trying to get my phone and their phone or their phone and my computer all syncing correctly. It's really hard.
So the comment there was about the syncing of the phones and his phone and getting everything aligned. All the stars have to be aligning in order for things to work. When Lauren was telling us this, what I was imagining was a recorded video. I wonder if, and I'm just wondering if pre-gaming the participants a bit with some direction about what it is that you're going to be covering might help to alleviate some of the thing, but it's going to be tough no matter what. It's always going to be tougher to do things like that virtually. HUD says not to store the video, so it has to be live. Oh, okay.
Well, it's going to be difficult for sure, but it's probably still safer than sending your inspector out to the apartment. So, and maybe this is something that with better Wi-Fi that it will be a little bit better when you're trying to do it live.
I did see a notice that REAC inspections are going to start again very shortly here, October. Interesting.
In related manner, part of the issue with going into the unit is not so much whether we have PPE and whether we give the tenant PPE, is that we're going into 5-10 homes a day, and the tenant is concerned that we're getting it from one unit and transferring it to theirs as far as the COVID. And so that's kind of a stumbling block as well.
Yeah, so the comment that was made there was concern about potentially getting COVID from one unit and transferring it to another unit. So less about the specific individual than it is about carrying it, and spreading it further. I think that's a reasonable concern. I think some people are using the waivers to postpone this. It's a tough call.
And biennial inspections too, Gabrielle, if they were able to do that.
Yep. Yeah, if I would try to discourage, though, if you can at all, using the waivers for recertifications. I understand that some people are not going to have an option in this, and you just have to do whatever you need to do that is going to be best for your agency. But certainly, I think there is a lack of clarity about what will happen when the waiver is lifted, because it sounds like the way that these waivers are written, as though you will then have to frantically do recertifications for people. And then everyone will have had their recertification basically at the end of the year. So trying to find a way, whether that's using online tools, using your software, or using paper and mailing things back and forth, whatever it is that you can do to try to keep up the recertification cycle, I think is ideal. That would be my strong suggestion. We at Yardi have emailed HUD to ask them a little bit about this, and sort of a begging email. Wouldn't you consider just letting people pass that recertification this year? And the answer was no, they can't. Not without going back to Congress. So anyway, if you're at all able to keep up with your research, it seems like that's a desirable thing to do.
Anyone else on some experiences maybe they've had with technology, or onboarding new staff? Any success stories?
I don't know if it's success really, but letting yourself know that it's okay that it feels like you're in quicksand, because you're gonna find a solution. It's not like you're not gonna get your job done. And yeah, it takes a lot longer, but now that we're kind of in a groove, I'm finding I'm a lot faster in other areas. So, I mean, it's okay to feel like you're in quicksand. So there you go.
I would so echo that. I'll say I went from real anxiety and paranoia, especially about my team's ability to do their jobs, to shock and pride at how productive they were and how creative they were. Especially, I'm going to call them my shared housing folks. My shared housing folks with their desktops were running cords, upstairs and through laundry rooms and doing all kinds of creative things in order to get connectivity. And one of the things I know I've gotten from this is amazement and awe at how much housing authorities have been able to accomplish, innovate, get done in the face of this crisis. I mean, unbelievable stories of what I consider to be success. People taking their CARES money to do very innovative and creative things, not just for their participants, but for their entire community.
Yeah, it's
so here's a
so
comment
true.
from Vanessa. Here's a comment from Vanessa at Housing Works about having technology does not replace meetings in person. I wholeheartedly agree with you. And I think one thing I would mention that I've noticed internally at Yardi and sometimes with clients is people just email and email and email when something is not clear. And it just goes right back to pick up the phone, you know, if you can do a Zoom meeting face-to-face, or at some point, we all, of course, hope that we can meet face-to-face. I know I love the PNRC conference, and I'm hoping it'll be in person next year and we won't be on Zoom. But I think it is definitely trying to maintain as much of a touch as you can personally. For sure, Vanessa, I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, whether we're working at a PHA, we work for NARO, we work for Yardi, I think all of our missions are still the same. And it's really cool to see people adapt. It's really cool to see strengths come out that, you know, that maybe we hadn't seen before. And I think, you know, a word that sums it all up is resiliency. So, you know, this was a great topic. We were very grateful we got to cover this today. And, you know, I think it's really encouraging to see everyone in the industry be resilient. And for those of you in housing, you're definitely an inspiration to us and many others. So we appreciate that.
And if I could leave you with something, if you look at your picture, the picture that has your name on it, and you look in the upper right, you'll see a small blue box with 3 dots. If you click that box, you'll see an item that says rename. If you click it, you can change your name to anything that you want and pass the Yardi technology.